Partial government shutdown about to extend into the new year with no deal on the horizon. The central sticking point still the $5 billion the president is demanding for his border wall. And we are now learning that House Democrats have settled on their strategy as they're poised to take over the House on Thursday. The Democrats in the House plan to offer funding for Homeland Security through February the 8th, and put up full-year bills to fund everything else using bipartisan Senate proposals. Of course, no way to know if President Trump will sign off as both parties continue the blame game. Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, taking a shot at Nancy Pelosi, who is vacationing in Hawaii amid the shutdown.
First, the Democrats have to come back. Nancy Pelosi needs to come back from Hawaii. Less hula, more moolah for the DHS, Customs and Border Patrol, funding our border security. They need to come to the table and do their job. A fully functioning democracy demands that both parties come together and that the Congress and the executive branch work together.
But one of the House Democrats' top leaders, New York's Hakeem Jeffries, accusing the president of holding the nation hostage.
Yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. Yes, we need to enhance border security, but we are not willing to pay $2.5 billion or $5 billion in wasting taxpayer dollars on a ransom note because Donald Trump decided that he was going to shut down the government and hold the American people hostage. That's unreasonable.
But Alabama Republican Senator Richard Shelby, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, says both sides need to stop pointing fingers. Watch.
We've got to move away from the blame game, blaming the president, blaming the Democrats, Pelosi and Schumer and others, and get back to doing what we're sent there to do, to fund the government. That's been my mandate. That's what we've been working hard this year in a bipartisan way on the Appropriations Committee.
Meantime, the president reportedly has not reached out to Nancy Pelosi since their meeting in the Oval Office earlier this month. But he has continued to hammer Democrats on Twitter. He tweeted this just this morning. It's incredible how Democrats can all use their ridiculous soundbite and say that a wall doesn't work. It does, and properly built, almost 100%. They say it's old technology, but so is the wheel. And so now they say it is immoral, but it is far more immoral for people to be dying. Hugo, let's start first with this plan from the Democrats to basically handle all the other funding except for the kind of Homeland Security, border security funding, kicking that into February. Will that go because you still have the Republicans controlling the Senate?
No, I think actually this is just the latest gambit. We've been in this argument now for nearly 2 weeks. It's more than a week since the President, through Mick Mulvaney, indicated that he was ready to compromise and cut the request from $5 billion to $2.5 billion. This is just the latest gambit. The thing about any really successful political statement like build the wall is that it can come back to backfire. The president knows he has to get something which looks like he's making progress towards the wall, and that's precisely what the Democrats want to deny him.
Rachel, on this note, it just seems like we're living in a world of insanity where politicians on both sides of the aisle are literally arguing over the difference between a little bit less than $2 billion and $5 billion. And Nancy Pelosi calling a wall immoral, and President Trump saying, well, it's a wall and it could be a fence potentially as part of the border security. It just seems like we've shut the government down for pure political gain. And that's what Americans, quite frankly, hate about politicians in general.
Absolutely. And Nancy Pelosi wouldn't be in Hawaii if she had any intention of negotiating. The president's in D.C., and he gets credit for that in some regards, and he's been tweeting. But I really think he's missed an opportunity. He's in D.C. He should look like he's actually reaching out. He should be calling her, telling her to come back. I've heard people suggest cutouts of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the Oval Office. Why didn't he have an Oval Office address? I mean, shutdowns happen, and the way they end traditionally is one side wins. So why limit yourself to your Twitter? Why not use something that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have, and that is the office of the presidency, the ability to call an Oval Office address and get the whole nation around. Remember, in the midst of this shutdown, we had really the most tragic, horrible example of what happens when you don't have security at your border. We had the death of Officer Singh, and what happens when you have sanctuary cities. I mean, he could have really framed this issue because it happened in the midst of this. And I think had he done that, we might have seen that this was a miscalculation on the part of Nancy to go to Hawaii and all the other Democrat lawmakers.
And we're gonna talk about the murder of Officer Singh later in the show, and because there are many parts to stopping that kind of violent crime in the United States, particularly sanctuary cities and sanctuary state like California. But Britt, to this point, the expected new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she is working to appeal to her most progressive wing.
Yes.
The most progressive Democrats. This is how she does it. And I can't imagine, well, a lot of people can't imagine that she would ever give President Trump a win on anything. And that would mean anything that is called funding for a border wall.
Yeah, and I think
4 letters.
You do have to give him credit for staying in Washington. To your point, I agree with you, Rachel, but it's like either way, whatever he does in the media, he's going to get crucified for it. When he did the cutouts before, remember, he's acting childish. He is the one in Washington still wanting to make progress. The president wants to keep good on his words. He campaigned on a border wall. Even General John Kelly, who did his exit interview with the Los Angeles Times yesterday, I thought handled that relatively in a classy way and said, look, we still do need this. There are parts of the border, the example you just referenced, where we are seeing crime, and it's incumbent on Congress to take action to stop that. Where I do agree with Richard Shelby is this is all taken on so much gamemanship that we risk human beings, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, missing a full paycheck January 11th, first time since the Obama shutdown, to really take that instead of any backdating on their pay. And then with the executive order, which again was keeping good on his promise in August to freeze the 2.1% pay increase, I live in Washington, D.C. I'm seeing a lot of these federal workers who just are completely disheartened. And I think we should remember that on both sides of the aisle as we continue to watch the shutdown.
I just want to bring up some of the details from Chad Pergram that in terms of what the House Democrats are actually going to propose. So about 3 or 4 p.m. this afternoon, they're going to tackle 6 appropriation bills for the rest of the fiscal year. So that would run through September 30th. That would give them a lot of breathing room. These are brand new bills, not temporary bills, and mirror what the Senate has already completed on the floor or in committee. The House will then do an interim plan for Department of Homeland Security running through February the 8th. And there have been reports that that will just basically extend existing funding, $1.3 billion in border funding. And there's actually been a tit-for-tat back and forth between Republicans and Democrats on this, that Republicans are saying that those funds, this is in the previous passage of it, that it will constitute wall money. And then the Democrats are saying, no, it's border security. It's not for a wall. So that gets to my point.
And you talked about the 4-letter word wall.
Well, I was going to say 3 not-letter word, but I was going to say 3 words, border wall funding. So I'm not, I wanted to correct that. So I can see the headlines, but go ahead, Molly.
Even prior to the holidays, Senator Schumer stood there on the floor and talked about how the president, to move forward, would need to literally abandon the wall. It became sort of the mantra. And then things went on the break. We had the holiday happening, and there was a lot of thought that nothing would get done until Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats returned, which, of course, we're waiting on Thursday to see things get forward. It looks like at this point in time, there's some paperwork. Potentially, we'll see if this fiscal funding actually comes through and if there can an agreement be made. But the big question is, when we talk about gamesmanship, right? You brought up gamesmanship as to who wins or who loses as we go forward in the long-term perspective. Will anyone remember this the closer we get to 2020? And is the question now, as Democrats are about to step in and potentially they have some information they'll be putting out, if they don't move forward, will it then become the Democratic game to lose?
Well, Hugo, I'm going to give you the final word on this, because there was a new USA Today Suffolk University poll, and that the one New Year's resolution, the biggest New Year's resolution that the poll respondent said was bipartisanship and working together when it comes to Washington. That was 29% of people in the poll. So my interpretation of that is all y'all down in Washington stink.
Yeah, people hate to see Washington not working, the 2 sides playing political games. They want to see Washington effective. It doesn't mean to say that shutdowns have long-term political effects, but people don't like it when they see the 2 sides just like this and refusing to talk to each other.
Hugo, final word for now.